So I think, as I mentioned, that without any doubt, the recent concept of Indian knowledge system and setting up of centers of major academic institutions and universities in the country is a major revolutionary step in the Indian academic world. Perhaps it is the first time when a serious attempt is being made to examine the many distortions which kept into the history documents due to various reasons and correct those to the extent possible. As is well recognized by the academia world over, we all know that, and it is accepted by all, that India possesses a unique position among all the ancient civilizations of the world. It is not only the only continuing one, but the availability of the huge amount of its ancient literature in a wide range of subjects is also unparalleled. Because of many unusual socio-political conditions in India's history, a very large proportion of this ancient knowledge, this knowledge body, became obscure and finally lost. You all know that our history, we know that there have been many dark periods. There have been a very long period where the rulers of a major part of the country, they didn't have much interest in India's original history, etc. Only I can. So I think the reason is that because of that, a lot of things got completely lost. 1,000 years of neglect is not a matter of joke. And we are happy to some extent when the Britishers came and Europeans started coming, they resurrected a lot of knowledge. But with they did that, but sometimes their objectives were not just to resurrect India's original knowledge, but also to show that the supremacy of the European nations. That was also in the mind. So there had been a lot of distortions, but we must be also grateful that they took the initial step to rediscover lots of lost knowledges. That there is no doubt about it. Now I think rediscovering this is a major task. A lot of lost knowledge of the IKS centers, which you are all well aware that you are also working towards that you will find out many lost information and knowledge. It is also presumed that many new possibilities may result through this process. Many new results will definitely come, I am quite sure, when so many great institutions are spending so much of time and effort, and all of you will be involved. There will be a lot of success in many areas of this. And however, this whole endeavor by the academia involves quite a few serious issues which must be addressed to if this revolution has to bring the desired results. At the same time, this whole effort is surely going to face major challenges that you should be aware of. But I think challenges will be of different types. I will discuss that. And in this lecture, what I thought it will be attempted to, or it will be appropriate to attempt to identify the major issues and some of these challenges, if the time permits. At the end, we will also discuss the ways and means which can play an important role in guiding the IKS revolution towards its desired goal and ultimate success. Now, I think before I start, I will show you that. So, the major civilizations of the world, the timeline. Now, this I have prepared by consulting various references. So, here you will see that the timeline is this, and the scale is like this. We start around 5000 BCE. BCE means before Common Era. Earlier we used to call it before Christ, but nowadays people have started using BCE. So, and we go up to 0. After that, it is more or less recorded history, and not much has to be done. Little bit has to be done, but not much. But our major focus will be to the areas where it is lost. But what is the India's location in this? You can see it started as far whatever little study I have done, it goes back to 7000 BC if you take the earliest era of the Vedic age, and even the earliest age of the Indus civilization, like Virana. Virana is 7000 BC. So Lahur Deva is still older. Say your Mehergarh is about 6500 BC. So therefore, we all consider these to be part of Indian civilization, and it is still continuing. We are following many things, which we have to be practiced even 3000 years back. So it is considered by all scholars of the whole world that it is a continuing civilization. On the other hand, if you take the Mesopotamian civilization, it's also pretty old, Sumerian, Akkadian, others all. So what it started around 3000 BC or little before that, but it ended little before the Common Era started. The Egyptian one, you all know, it also started around 3000 BC and ended around the Common Era beginning. The Chinese one started about 2000 or around that time, and it continued up to the first millennia of AD, or the after Christ or after Common Era started. And the ancient Greece lies here, and ancient Roman Empire, Roman civilization. So you can see the India's very special position in this, that where it stands. And very interestingly, it is a continuing one. Now I think, so this is what I think we prepared about India's chronology. You can see that it is, at the top you can see it is the Vedic and Puranic tradition. So that is one way, by studying those you can find out the chronology, and it stands there. Astronomical pointers, as Professor Sen was mentioning, archaeoastronomy has been very useful in deciding the chronology of the past, and there of course the astronomical pointers can be used to find out the major era of various epoch of various events all along. And Puranic and genealogical lists of kings also gives us a lot of information about chronological character. That also stands as this. Next is Sindhu Saraswati civilization, archaeological evidence we have, and that is standing here. And Vedic Saraswati and climate change studies also can be placed here. Now this part is called proto-historical part. There is a transition part, and after the birth of Gautama Buddha, more or less it is considered as historical part. You all know perhaps that what is proto-history and what is history, and what is prehistory. These are the three terms which are used. Prehistory, you all know that which is much before, and we don't have much information about some very rudimentary things. Proto-historic period is that where there are information, lot of information, but they are not decipherable, like Indus Valley civilization. We have lot of scripts, lot of tablets, lot of many things, but everything has not been deciphered. So there is still lot of hazy areas about information of those periods, and they are called proto-historic period. And in historic period, things are well recorded and well charted out, and no problem in deciding things. Now, as you can see, that Indian civilization, as I just showed, is the continuing one. Next, I think what I would like to show that this is the India's chronological past or chronological timeline, and as one goes back in time, the information about Indian knowledge tends to become obscure, obviously, because as when you go back past in time, things will become less and less clear, hazy, lot of things lost, lot of things distorted, lot of things injected, lot of things taken out, and so on. So this passage of time introduces haziness and also darkness. So therefore, the ancient texts may not always represent a reality. Another thing I must tell you, I will tell you, that human imagination or human capability to imagine has remained not very much different along thousands of years. Brain development, as you all know, is not that much that somebody's brain power a few thousand years back was less than ours. No. So therefore, their imagination capability also was there. So we have to be very careful about what was imaginary and what was real. I'll give some concrete examples when I come to the main part of my talk today. Now you see, as you go past in time, it tends to become less and less clear. It tends to become obscured by the very antiquity and the loss of information due to the passage of time. Now, as I just mentioned, that like all, this is a revolutionary endeavor what the country has taken now to set up IKS centers in major institutions and universities. And this endeavor, this revolution in Indian academia, it has to face challenges. You will see that you already have faced perhaps, but I think we should also discuss that. However, first of all, it is essential to crystallize the primary aims and objectives behind this new movement, so far as I understand it. Maybe I may not have complete information, but I think persons or the academicians like Professor Sen, they must be aware of these things, that what are the clear-cut aims and objectives of this IKS revolution. So I thought, in my opinion, and maybe you can add to this list or you can take out something, that this could be identified as to crystallize and consolidate the IKS concept. You may say, what is there in that? Now, if I ask you a question that, what is IKS? Can you tell me what is IKS? What is Indian knowledge? Can you define what is Indian knowledge? Is it, knowledge is nothing but the truth about the nature, isn't it? So can it be Indian, or can it be, knowledge can be different in USA and different in India? You all know that it is not so. So what is that we mean by Indian knowledge system? So you have to be very careful. Suppose, is it that knowledge which is created on the soil of India? Like if I say that C.V. Raman discovered the Raman effect, is it a part of Indian knowledge system? What is the answer? Yes or no? So you can see that you are not very clear about what is IKS. You know, you all are aware of that, some blind people wanted to learn how an elephant looks. See, they all assembled and there was an elephant, they are touching. Who touched the trunk? He said, oh, it is like a pipe. Elephant looks like a pipe. Somebody touched the legs and feet. He said, no, elephant actually looks like a pillar. Somebody touched the body. He said, no, it looks like a big, huge drum. Somebody touched the tail. He said, no, it is like just like a thread kind of thing. So you can see that everybody's description, they are only partly correct. If you assemble the whole thing, you get the correct one. But there is another thing. IKS definition is still more difficult. I will explain it with the help of another example of the story of another blind man. So there was a blind man, blind from the birth. So when he was old, he has a very close friend. He was a normal person. So he was one day telling, you see, I am now already 60 years old. I like drinking milk. I am drinking milk from my boyhood. I have grown up. I like it so much. But I feel so bad that I don't know how it looks. Then the friend said, why? It is a white colored liquid. He said, no, liquid I understand, but what is white? Friend said, white is a color. But what color? The white is the color of that swan. Swan, what is swan? Then the friend said, swan is a bird with a bent neck. Bent neck. So what is bent? Then said, you don't understand bent. Okay, you touch my hand. So he bent his hand like this and bent after this. He said, oh, at last I understand how milk looks like. So I think sometimes it can go too much, in that kind of inference. So therefore, I will request the IKS center, particularly Kharagpur is the biggest and the first one, give a clear definition of what is IKS or what is Indian knowledge system. Because frankly speaking, I have a lot of hesitation in accepting any particular thing. Just now, I asked you a question whether C.V. Raman's Raman effect can be considered as a part of Indian knowledge system or not. So that is the first task I think you should do. And Professor Sen, do you agree that there is certain degree of hesitance in that? Yeah. What is Indian knowledge system? Otherwise, if you don't know that, how do you work on that? Maybe you will work on something and later you will know it is not a part of Indian knowledge system. That is not good. So it is better to have first, to the extent possible, a clear-cut idea about what is meant by Indian knowledge system. I don't think that anybody who has coined this term has given a proper definition. I have not come across it. So that is one thing. And as I told you, that sometimes we may think we know, just like a blind person, but it may not be the right thing. So next one is the next primary aim will be objective to discover and unearthing many lost knowledges. Lot has been done, but I think huge amount, much more amount is still not discovered. It is still under the ground kind of thing. So that will be another task or objective of the IKS revolution, to bring out whatever was lost as to the extent possible by various means. You all know that method will be different. So that is another important objective of IKS center to my understanding. Next is to systematize this knowledge. Now just if you get huge amount of knowledge, it is also important that you have to really properly arrange it in a systematic form, so that when it goes to posterity, to the future generations, it is much easier for them to comprehend the whole issue. So just unearthing information is not enough. You will find there are lots of cases you have to decide that a particular knowledge, it goes to this branch or that branch. So all these kinds of things are very important for IKS centers. Whenever something new is found out, where it goes, where it is proper place, how you classify it. So this systematization of the whole information base or knowledge base you create is very important. And most importantly, I keep on harping on this issue, getting IKS accepted as a part of mainstream academics. I can tell you, today it is not. Maybe some of you who are dedicated and interested in this, you take it emotionally so much to your heart. But if you really consider the major mainstream academia, IKS is still not a part of mainstream academia. It only segregated, only a few individuals. Sometimes they are considered as a kind of a sect and who are too nationalistic or too religious, etc. All kinds of these difficulties come in getting it. So therefore, this is the biggest challenge, that ultimately maybe once this revolution reaches its maturity and completes its responsibilities, IKS, whatever it is, it becomes part of our mainstream academia for the future generation students. I have to, once the primary objectives are more or less identified, next comes the what are the major issues which are expected during this IKS revolution. So let us have some idea. Now, as I mentioned, that these are all my thinking, and whatever little I have done in IKS during the last 15-20 years, it is my understanding. It may not be complete, so don't take it like that. What I am saying is the gospel truth. No, it is not. Please also give input to your own understanding and your own knowledge. So the main major issues, first is accessibility to the primary sources for the researchers. I personally felt very serious difficulty because I was studying only the ancient Indian astronomy and associated topics. So primarily, other things also we have read, but I have not studied that thoroughly. But I found myself to be not a true expert because I didn't have the capability to go to the primary sources because I am not an expert in Sanskrit. So, and a major part of our ancient literature will be either in Sanskrit, ancient Sanskrit, or Pali. So, therefore, because a lot of information is there in Jaina and Buddhist literature, they are in Pali. So, therefore, if somebody is not very thorough in these languages, to extract the meaning or information and knowledge out of the ancient texts may not be always possible. So this is the primary, one of the primary issue which comes to my mind while doing activities in the area of IKS. Since is the absence of proper documentation, though there are few institutes like Bhandarkar Institute in Pune, like that, there are not many institutes where things are documented, where one can easily go to the index, find out something, and study that. So, a absence of proper documentation about the information available, that what is available, what you find in Benares Indian University, what you find in Bhandarkar Institute, what you find in Tamil Nadu, it is not known. It is not well documented. So, for a researcher, it is not always very easy to get a complete picture of the whole issue or whole that particular knowledge. That is one major issue, I think. Next is absence of information of the location of old texts, and where you can, lots of old texts, you will find some temples, you will find some caves in Himalaya, you will find in some institutions, and even in some personal collections. Lot of ancient texts, what we call puthi, they are in personal collections still, both within India and outside India. So this also is very important. Maybe one side of issue or activity could be to have information about the location of various kinds of old texts, information, puthis, everything. So these are the first thing what I thought, the accessibility to the primary sources for researchers. One is language issue, other is documentation absence, and other is locational lack of information about location. Next is correct interpretation of ancient texts. This is very serious issue. Now, ancient texts are not as easy like that. You find a science book today, it very clearly defines everything. I tell you one of my personal experience. Long time back, it was I think 1995, I was spending some time in Germany, and one of my friend there, a senior friend, colleague, he happened to be an IIT Kharagpur student of civil engineering, the first batch, 1956. He was an old resident of Aachen. So every week, he used to give me his a magazine called Desh, published by Ananda Publishers, and it's a very well-known magazine, weekly magazine it used to be. So he was a subscriber of that, and whenever he finishes, he used to give it to me. And obviously, being in Germany, you will always love to go through those things. So I used to read. So one such issue I got, and I found an article. I forgot the name of the author. The topic was Ishwar, Vigyan and Chetana. Very interesting. Let me see. So I started reading. It's a serious article and published in a magazine like this. So it should have certain degree of respectability and authenticity also. I found that that article contains that we had information about everything. He says the Mahabharata describes the orbital motion of the planets, including Earth, etc., and he gives some reference. Then he said that our ancient sages, they knew about the Big Bang theory, they give some reference. I said, how is it? And I looked at the reference. reference says Brahma Sutra this and this. So as I mentioned, I'm not an expert in ancient texts. So I said, okay, when I come back to India, to Kanpur, my colleague and neighbor's wife was a very senior professor of Sanskrit. She may be able to help. After I came back to Kanpur, I went to Professor G. K. Lal's home and asked Karunaji, his wife, I go, do you have? She used to keep all such ancient texts. Brahma Sutra was there. She said, can I see the Brahma Sutra such and such, volume such and such? She was very happy. He said that Dr. Ghosh is interested in ancient texts, So, I'm telling you, this is a psychological problem. If a professor of IIT looks into some ancient Sanskrit text, they think, oh, it is a great thing. No, it should not be. Because this is a divide which has been created. That is very bad. So I asked her, so she found out, yes, I saw. You know what I found? That particular sutra, Brahma Sutra, is all cryptic thing, small. Kampanath. Now I realized that Kampanath has been interpreted as the Big Bang theory. So that is the problem. I think you cannot convince a general scientist of the world that Kampanath is Big Bang. It is somebody's own wishful thinking, it could be. So actually, what happened then, Professor Mishra, she was a professor, she asked me, oh, Ghosh Sahab, you are interested in this? Why are you interested in this thing? I said, I read such and such article in this magazine. When I was in Germany, I wanted to verify. Then I find this. Then she immediately was very upset. बोले आप लोग तो ही है ना अंग्रेजी पढ़ के आप लोग ये सब मानते ही नहीं. So this is the problem. So this divide we have to. So the correct interpretation of ancient texts is a serious issue. I can interpret anything. I can interpret Kampanath as Big Bang theory. No. So there I have nothing to say about it. And this makes I think those who are doing studies, their results, they are always looked with a degree of suspicion. They are not taken just like that. They said, oh, it is somebody's interpretation. It can be all useless bunk. Next thing is screening the realities from imaginary situations. Here I will give you an example. Imagine a case 4500 AD. That will be another 2500 years from now. You consider, suppose somebody like this body here, they also had an eye case, or in those days not eye case, or maybe then they were spread all over solar system. They said, okay, say Earth knowledge system. Okay, so EKS. So they will do a lot of research, and somebody will find out these Star Wars movies. Oh, you see, in 1995, they had space travel, they could go to other galaxies. Do you think it will be a right kind of interpretation? Because it was imaginary, because our imagination is fertile, we do a lot of things, even today's many science fictions, which are not at all realizable, not realized, but it is in our imagination. So therefore, anything you find in ancient text, accepting that, it was real, I think one should be careful. Just example I have given you. If it is considered then the world had a solar system or intergalactic travel in the year 2000, it will be wrong. Though there will be lots of movies, lots of books, everything, you will see a lot of Star Wars kind of movies. So that is another very important issue which has to be kept in mind, and screening the realities from the imaginary situation. Maybe in the past also they had imagination. Somebody could write something which he thought in his imagination. May not have been there in practice. Next is identifying the knowledge base purely of Indian origin and those with external influence. This is somewhat linked with the definition of IKS. If you define IKS is that knowledge base which has absolutely no interaction with the outside world, so that is one thing. So therefore, you have to, when you find out something, whether it should be a part of IKS or not, This particular thing you have to see. Like as I mentioned, Raman effect definitely is not without external influence. It is a part of modern physics, and a lot of outside work has been done, and India is a part of that. It is not wholly. It is not owned by India in that sense. Next will be understanding the true value of the extracted knowledge and the possible usefulness of the rediscovered knowledge. This is a very serious question. Even I have been asked many times, what is the use? What happened? Somebody wrote 2000 years back that knowledge out there. What is the use of that? So, use is, one has to convince the other mainstream academia the usefulness of the ancient knowledge which you are finding or which you are researching on. So therefore, there are many cases, there may be real usefulness like in Ayurveda, some ancient knowledge may be even extremely useful today in treatment of certain disease. One never knows. So similarly, there may be other areas where a similar situation may exist. And finally, the last issue, providing solid scholarly and scientific foundation to the rediscovered knowledge. We have to convince the mainstream academia about the correctness, usefulness of the knowledge which you have extracted and which existed. No, even if it is not useful today, but sometimes, like say chronology. Chronology is very important for history. The whole world history of humanity cannot be correctly understood unless you understand India's ancient history. Whether Aryans came in 1500 BC, that kind of story is correct or not. Whether the Vedic civilization started in Pamir 10,000 BC or not, these things actually affect the whole world history. So therefore, the solid scholarly scientific foundation is important to this, and this can be done now because this whole IKS activity has to interact with the regular branches of science and technology, archaeology, paleoclimatology, your geophysiology, archaeology already is there. All these things, you have to make use of radioisotope methods, all kinds of things you have to use so that the knowledge which you extract has a solid scientific footing and support. So these are the major issues, and as I mentioned earlier, there can be definitely many others which you may come across when the revolution proceeds further. Now, once the issues are there, let us consider what are the major challenges you may face. That I am sure that you are going to, you have to be very careful about. Any revolutionary activity is bound to face challenges, obstructions, and all kinds of. There will be people who will have obscurantist intention to derail your activities. The major challenges which need to be kept in view will be something like that. One is this also, I think, that controlling the over enthusiastic persons whose pronouncements and claims jeopardize the credibility of IKS movement. This is happening again and again, and we hear in Science Congress somebody says we had an atom bomb or we had rocket for space travel. These kinds of claims always put this whole activity under suspicion. That what is happening? Are these nuts or they are real good academics or scholars? So, pronouncing something, one must have absolute proof and reliable evidence so that it gets accepted, not as some cranky fellow's daydream or reality. So, these persons have to be controlled, and if such persons are there, I will advise these real IKS centers should disown them. then only you can maintain your credibility. If somebody may pronounce, freedom of speech is there, so I can always say that, okay, our ancestors, they knew everything, but there is nothing wrong in it. But I think IKS Center should be careful about whether if you keep quiet, then it will be considered that you are accepting it. If you don't think that it is a proper pronouncement and claim, it is better to disown such people. Then only you can maintain your credibility to the mainstream academia. Next is convincing the general academia about the correctness of the findings, as I mentioned, they are linked, and the ancient knowledge, that what you are finding out, that they are correct, they are not daydreams, nor they are enthusiastic, wishful thinking. So that is very important. Next is making the general academia aware of the usefulness of the IKS. As I mentioned, that maybe you will face this question. So why are you doing it? These are all ancient knowledge. Kya kaam aayega hamara? So I think you should have enough um, strength in your activity to prove that what you are doing, sometimes even something will be very useful in setting up India's past history and the current. That is also very important. If India's history, like what is the usefulness of deciphering India's valley civilization history? If somebody can do it, it will be something like a Nobel Prize winning work, in my opinion, in ancient history. But what is the usefulness? Deciphering the script of some tablets which were there 3,500 years back. No practical use, but it will change the course of history, the way you understand history. So that is important. What is the point in learning what Akbar did? That is 400 years back. So anybody can question that Prabhu is still taught in school. So it is because without those things, our knowledge of humanity or human society or civilization is not complete. Next is getting the relevant portions of IKS incorporated in standard texts and literature. This has to also go hand in hand, that when something very dependable comes, it should go into the textbooks. So when a student reads, actually the main damage is done from the school level. Their brain is, uh, uh, what I'll say, doctored by all kinds of dogmas. Dogmas, 400 years back, what was the dogma? That Earth is at the center of the universe, everything is moving. That was the dogma. Now what is the dogma? That there was a big bang. But now this space telescope which is there, it's finding a totally showing that there is nothing like a big bang. So these are nothing but hypotheses by some great, very powerful people in academia, and that's why they continue. Similar thing is a Aryan invasion. It's also nothing but a dogma. It has not been proved, but it is somebody's hypothesis. So when a school student at the young age is taught these things, in his mind it becomes an established truth. He is not told that it is a hypothesis. So that is the thing. Therefore, you should start taking action so that your findings gradually diffuse into the books and texts of the school and colleges. And next, very important, please keep it in mind, IKS should be protected and isolated from all types of political agenda. Now, what I want to say next is the way forward. How we go ahead now. That is important. You have set up IKS, there are core faculty, and you have come from various places, you will go back. What will be the activities of future activities? First, I think I consider that you may consider this particular item. Very important to get the younger generation introduced to the IKS. I feel you should start not the senior college guys, but go to primary school and middle school and talk with the students at that level. What is the Indian knowledge base? What you think? So this requires appropriate introduction to the IKS at the school level from the early stages of their education, so that their brain doesn't get burdened with various dogmas. Next, to attract the younger generation to the IKS activity. How do you attract general academia or younger generation particularly to IKS activities? Just dry lectures and discussions about theology, etc., is never going to attract them. So, I believe that you have various activities like performing art, drama, music, etc. Through those things, you can attract the general young student base. And as I mentioned, I have discussed with Professor Sen, I wrote a drama on Aryabhatta. Now, that is the first drama. There has been no drama so far on Aryabhatta 1. So, I studied his life, whatever little is available, injected some of my imagination. Based upon that, what was the result? Why in Kerala, Aryabhatta's astronomy has more influence than in North India, though Aryabhatta was definitely a North Indian. So all these things I consider. This is a short drama. So like that, there are other kinds of dramas you can have. So then if you tell the school students, this drama was staged by the students of Hemshila school in Durgapur. It's a very good school. So like that, it can be done by college and university students. Maybe more dramas like that. I am not a dramatist, I am not an expert. But I think these things should be also in your mind. Write those things, create new dramas, and tell the students to enact them, so they will feel involved and they will feel a part and parcel of the whole. And it is also very essential to develop appropriate repositories of the available ancient literatures, because they are still very scattered, not easily available. So, and it should be not only at some few IKS centers, these repositories should be also in schools, colleges, universities, so that any interested student can have access to this kind of thing. What you are finding, all this knowledge base. And finally, adequate effort should be ensured to generate a large number of publications suitable for general public and young students and children in the form of books, journals. Take help of NCERT. Make small books on Indian astronomy, Indian drama in the Kalidas's time, Indian ancient mathematics, so that even in middle school level they get an NCERT books are very easily accessible, they are widely publicized. So write such books. So that I think Ramakrishna Mission and Indian National Academy of Science, Allahabad, they took such a part and they have prepared or published 11 volume a series of ancient Indian history or history of science in India, sorry. So there the volume 1 part 2 was on ancient Indian astronomy. Now we were told the editorial board were all the various scientists like Professor M.G.K. Menon, Professor S.K. Joshi, all senior scientists of our country, and they told it very categorically that your book, what you are writing, must be accessible or understandable by a high school student, not beyond that. Lot of literature is available, but they are very difficult for a general student to understand. It needs an expert to understand. Even in ancient Indian astronomy, there are books, but I can guarantee you will not understand that. So, since the canvas which IKS aims at is very wide, and that's what I was saying, it is extremely important to systematize the whole knowledge base in IKS. Otherwise, it gets little bit mixed up here and there. So, as you mentioned, it is very important. It is not only important to know about what happened 500 years back in a battlefield, but what is happening now also is a part of Indian knowledge system. That's why you have to define what is IKS first. If somebody thinks only something happened before the Common Era in 2200 BC, no. Even what is happening 10 years back could be a part of Indian knowledge system. So please, this is something which is the greatest problem I have faced in this whole IKS business. I am not an expert, that what exactly IKS means. So I think IKS centers should take it from the very beginning to publish large number of small books, easily understandable by junior school students, not the class 12 students. Exactly, precisely, Amar Chitra Katha. Pictorial books, that is very important. And if you can reach children, half of your fight is over. They will not have that much of animosity towards anything like this. They will say, no, you are recreating history. This is this ultra nationalistic attempt. Those things will not be there. You have already owned their heart and you have already some place in their mind. So that's what I am requesting. So do this directly through various programs, through publications suitable for young school children, and you attract them through drama, music, etc. So many things you can do that. So that kind of the wall which has been created, anything you do like this, you will find that there will be a group of people who will say you are all either you are ultra rightist or somebody like you will call them ultra leftist. Academia doesn't have place for such kind of divide. So this is the important suggestion that from the very beginning plan, and because it will take time to have books in various areas of ancient Indian knowledge base for the class 4, 5, 6 level students and make those publications very easily accessible to them, as lady is telling that Amar Chitra Katha pictorially done, not just text. I am sure half of your war will be over. So I think these are few things which came to my mind, whatever little of understanding I have about IKS, and I thought Kharagpur IIT's IKS Center being the first one and perhaps the most well established, and I'll say you have already a core faculty. No other IKS center has core faculty, and it's the largest IIT with such a huge repository of knowledge in various branches of engineering, science, arts, even literature. So I think this is the right place that you can start at least and also advise other IKS centers some of the suggestions I have given, which you think is acceptable. So I am extremely thankful for the invitation you have given to me and to interact with these faculty members in IKS. And as I mentioned that I didn't want to discuss something very specific topic today. I thought let us at least discuss something which in my opinion is very important at the very beginning of this IKS revolution in our country. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
But my concern and the thought process goes is why the word Indian is? Why not Bharat? Bharat knowledge system rather than Indian knowledge system.
Our constitution starts like this: India, that is Bharat. So therefore, I think why you duplicate it? India is Bharat according to our constitution. So when you write in Hindi, then knowledge and system both are English words. Why you want to then? Why not translate the whole thing? Why Bharat knowledge system? Translate the whole thing in Hindi or Sanskrit. If you write in English, it is perfectly all right as Indian knowledge system. If you make it Bharat, then translate knowledge, translate system, everything. Then it will be all right. Something like that.
Yeah, in Kharagpur, as Sir points out, we have done it. Bharatiya Gyan Pranali, which slightly differs from what others are doing. It's Bharatiya Gyan Pranali. So these are the channels of knowledge systems which has a powered and a semantic Indian way of doing things, also incorporating the universal view of scientific systems. Both. Because India as a civilization has always been universal, always been assimilative.
Hello sir, thank you for the information. You told that IK should be protected from any kind of political agenda. But as a teacher, when I teach this subject in my class, sometimes I face the issue that some people think that I am promoting the religious agenda in the class. So
No,
okay.
I understand that. That's what I tell. You start reaching the students from the very young age. So I think when they are in very, I think, middle school level from there, then I think they are slowly, because suddenly if you tell something which goes against the kind of indoctrination they have gone through, they will find it is something perhaps out of the way coming. So therefore it is better to, and this is one of the challenge, you have to accept it, and you can make it acceptable to the general academia only when you make your pronouncements and your findings dependable and absolute on solid foundation. Making all kinds of claims that, okay, like component means Big Bang theory, you are bound to have such problems. But don't make such claims.
My question is that you are talking about, we also write that this curriculum as a way forward can be implemented in our 10+2 studies, maybe even earlier from today's discussion I come to know. But do you think how will it be? Is it be feasible for the government to implement in the convent school and the madrasas as well?
No, I don't know, but one thing, uh, I think majority of these schools, I'm saying that Amar Chitrakatha is not a textbook of any, but what I said that when you put them in text, what you find a solid foundation. So how Aryan invasion theory goes in all texts? Why it has gone? So because it was considered to be an established truth at that time. So similarly, there has to be a kind of things. And as a madrasa, I am not familiar with their what is exactly the curriculum they follow. But I think convent schools curriculum cannot be something very totally different. No? Actually, it is about academics in India. When you teach about history or something like that, so these things has to be corrected. That there are, I think there should be, there will be challenges, as I mentioned, they are not very easy things, but I think it has to be kept in mind and done to some extent. At least if you do, even if you leave you aside some convent schools, what fraction of students go to general schools other than convent schools? You will find a huge majority of the students are coming there. Even IIT students, if you see, majority of them, they don't come from convent schools. They come from general schools, but maybe from CBSE, and may not be state level board, but maybe from CBSE. But convent school representation is not, and even in convent school, in many cases they follow CBSE, I have seen. Because of the joint entrance examination, they find CBSE syllabus is most suitable. And so all schools try to put their students through that, so that their students don't find much difficulty for preparing in joint entrance examination. So there are various ways you can do some little bit of art twisting, So you see, this is an indirect way of impressing upon people the usefulness of a central board school. Because if you make the joint entrance syllabus very similar, they will automatically. West Bengal board was very different earlier. But now gradually they are going towards CBSE because the students are facing difficulty in preparing for the joint entrance, central joint entrance, I mean to say. So these are kinds of things you have to plan. Just in one hour lecture, we cannot say, even I may not know that what is to be done. These are all uncharted areas, what he has done before. So many areas where you have to invent the way of doing a new thing. But I think reaching the school level is not very difficult if it is done in an appropriate way. So you follow target the CBSE and other. So forget about the convent. So you will automatically, very 90% of the students, they will be go through, they will be exposed to these kinds of things.
Yeah, actually, this is one of my questions, one of my concerns that today what we are seeing through IKS is introduction of social science within the science discipline.
Introduction of social
Of
science?
social sciences,
Ah.
history, sociology, management,
Yeah.
even rural development in the science disciplines. Like engineering, people should study whatever social scientists have already studied in the history about engineering. So, and then there is another gap that social scientists should should take up newer methods of studying social science. Like I work in AI and humanities. So I really wanted to understand that is it not the responsibility, maybe it is, for the IKS to take social sciences as a group of subjects and then to present it to the students in IITs, IIMs, just not to introduce the traditions, the old historical traditions, but the newer traditions of social sciences who have been studying things from the bottom up and establishing that development does not lie above, it lies in the ground also.
Have you considered this question that what subject you treat as a science? Science word has come from your word, original ancient word scientia. Yeah. So nowadays we said economic science, social science, political science. Are they really science?
Is it not the clash of methodologies? Positivist, if you make political science more positivist oriented, it becomes a science. Is it not the question of methodology?
No, what is science then? Actually, I just wanted to know how political science can be a science.
If it follows a positivist methodology.
One of my friend, he was a very senior economist, Calcutta University. According to he is no more, but according to him, wherever we have involvement of human being, it is difficult to class it as a science because science is very predictable. So in any branch where things are not so mathematically easily predictable, it is not to be considered as a science. It is a subject. So according to him, Professor Malik, that where human beings are involved, extent like political science, social science, and to some extent economic science, it is not appropriate to call it science because you cannot predict things. Like say science, Newton's law. Whether I do a sum and recommend something, same another person will give the same recommendation. The result will be same. But in economics, what happens? What Amartya Sen says, Professor Bhagavati says the opposite thing. Both are great economists. So similarly, in social science also you will find the two great social scientists, their recommendations or the results will be very different. So that I personally find, since you asked this question, that what exactly is science, whether you can consider political science, social science as science. Can you predict something very definitely with social science? Tell me, give an example.
So there are consumer behaviors and other things that we have.
No, I'm saying, you say that, okay, this is, if you do this, this will happen.
The debate is that science is also a social science. The kind of knowledge that is accepted as truth. So currently, the things we are debating,
No, if anything, I'm telling you, it is precisely predictable thing, it is a science. I agree. So if you can say that this, if I do, this will happen. If you can do it in economics, in politics, in sociology, I agree. But anyhow, I didn't understand your question thoroughly, what you said.
Like, IKS is not about history, it's about bringing social sciences, whatever has happened currently in the field of there is sociology of science. So where we study how scientific knowledge becomes the thing that is like the fact. So,
these issues are some of general nature, It has nothing to do with Indian knowledge system. What you are saying is true for all kinds of knowledge systems. So therefore it is a very general question, not associated with Indian knowledge system. So therefore I don't know exactly what should be your reaction or what can be done. I am not an expert in that. First of all, I don't understand what subject is considered as a science and what is not. Like say mathematics, if you write mathematics, but it is a science. Physics, everybody knows it is science. But social science, you have to say social science. So according to that friend I was mentioning, that wherever you have to add science word is not really a science.
I remember when we were constructing this FTP, Professor Kapil Kapoor, who's a patron, he was saying at that time that any organized knowledge is science. That is how he looked at it. I remember one of his statements.
No, predictability is very important. Just organization doesn't mean anything. History also is an organized subject. Is it a science? No, you have to have, science means, word comes from scientia, ancient Greek word. So, if something you give an input condition and you get a result, predictable result, it is a science. Wherever it is not, so as I was giving the example of my friend, Professor Malik, that where human beings are involved in large way, they are not predictable. You all know that we are not predictable.
So I have a question here,
Yeah.
if I can ask. For scientific methods, we have so many ways to conclude. But when it comes to human subjectivity, then that framework of measuring human subjectivity, the way it is in psychological sciences, it is very contradictory. We are measuring human subjectivity, which is different for every human being. Input and output cannot be the same.
No, I can tell you one.
There has to be a different framework.
No, I'm telling you, I understand the question. Even in science, what we do, like if I throw this ball there, I know that I can predict the path according to law of gravitation. But if I throw an electron, you will not be able to predict the path. So in science also, it is a statistical thing. So in case of human also, if you take one human being, you may not be able to predict. But if you take 100,000 human beings, then their collective behavior is predictable. So that is the thing I am saying. But individual level, you cannot predict.
We are contemplating on coming up with a different kind of framework. Let us see the first person inquiry framework, wherein my truth as a human being is my truth, and it perhaps cannot be validated by a third person or a third questionnaire or EEG or whatsoever. So we are thinking now to see how can the first person inquiry framework can also be established, especially when it comes to psychological sciences, because if a person is a meditator, is into yoga,
No,
it
that is
becomes
what I am saying.
very
Professor
easy to
Chopra.
objectively watch one's thoughts and feelings distance away, and then that becomes a data.
No, but even the medical science, etc., they're all statistically correct. They're the information what you find in medical science based upon studying a huge number of human beings. And then their collective gross average behavior or the property or the that is known. But individual level you don't know. So that is the
I think what Sir is taking us to is in the borders of, what is Cartesian, individual, and then when it becomes an agglomerate, a collective, a mahat, together, that brings us to the two levels of science. So that is also the fight, as Sir said, going within science, between reductionist science and the quantum science world, which is slowly emerging. The quantum biology, the quantum computation, where the movement of a single particle is not predictable, but when you see the sum total of the system, something becomes discernible. That is a debate that happened between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. It started at that point, and today it's going on and on and on since the days of Werner Heisenberg to the recent 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics, which is on quantum entanglement. And the debate goes on. So it's a beautiful thing which Sir just said, a conflict and a conflict resolution within science itself. What's happening? I think you have to watch that. What's happening within the so-called definition of science itself will actually give us ways and means to what Dr. Chopra is trying to say. I think the coming days are extremely challenging. The coming days are extremely beautiful also at the same time. Yes, I think Dr. Mahesh or Dr. Aniket has a question.
I am Aniket from Kolkata. I have a question. Is there any similarity or any difference between Orientalist approach or Orientalism and between IKS? Between IKS and Orientalist approach?
it is more of East Asian thing. That is Oriental, more or less. I'm not very clear. That is the thing I have heard, that Oriental dance does not mean Indian dance. That will be Balinese or your Chinese and those kinds of. They are considered Oriental. But these are very, I am not an expert in humanities and all those subjects. I'm just a mechanical engineer. So I'll not be able to satisfy you, but your question I didn't really follow very much.
Pranam sir, I am Dr. P.M. Srinivas, working as an associate professor in Central Sanskrit University. Sir, you have mentioned major issues to be kept in the mind. Third issue is correct interpretation of ancient Indian texts.
What?
Correct interpretation of ancient texts.
Yeah.
So, at present, many of the texts are translated in English or Hindi. Majority of the texts are translated in Hindi. But some texts like metallurgy and our university teaches Sanskrit as a major subject from +2 to PG. We are having more than 14 departments, more than 6 departments in philosophy itself. So we can collaborate. So what are the texts to be translated remain, the modern needs of the society. Then we can, there are 17 Sanskrit universities and our university has 11 campuses all over India. We are teaching Sanskrit through Sanskrit medium only. So we need some sort of training to translate the texts to bring out to the nation, in front of the nation. That is one my suggestion. Such a dynamic personality like you can lead the consult the.
No, main thing, as I said, that my difficulty has been the inability to access the primary sources. So, because whenever you go from primary source to secondary source, already an interpretation has been done in many cases. So, therefore, I don't know exactly what was there. I am reading the translation. So, already that person who has translated his interpretation, it is not mathematics that 1 plus 1 is 2. So, there are always scope for interpretation, as I mentioned, Kamponath, utilities Big Bang theory, So, that is too much for me to accept. That kind of thing should not happen. One should be careful. But in many cases, you will find it is clear cut. But in many cases, there are allegories. Ancient texts are full of allegories, mainly because what I have been told that in those days they didn't want the knowledge to go to common public. So they have been always covered by allegories and real meaning. In astronomy, there are many such evidences. Like say Rohini's story that it was nothing but the crossing of the star, the median. So that was, and it is also one reason is that remembering a story is much easier than remembering a theory. So that was another reason why ancient people used to teach there, because it was all verbally. So remembering a story used to be much easier compared to remembering a theory. So that's why they put all in terms of stories and allegories. So that one has to be careful about.